You never really notice the small things about your workplace until it starts getting under your skin. For me, it was the faint sound of whispers. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. Maybe the hum of the old air conditioning system in our office or the distant chatter of co-workers from another floor. But as days turned into weeks, I realized something wasn't right. It all started when I joined this new job at Sterling Logistics, a mid-sized company known for its high turnover rate. People came and left so often that I rarely saw the same faces 2 weeks in a row. The office building itself felt off. It was located in a dilapidated part of the city, a towering structure with peeling walls and flickering fluorescent lights. The elevator always groaned like it was carrying the weight of ghosts. I worked the night shift. My position as a data analyst required long hours, often alone in the dimly lit 8th floor office. The daytime bustle of employees was replaced by eerie silence at night, broken only by the occasional creaks of the old building settling or the soft click of my keyboard. I used to think I preferred the quiet, but this was different. This silence wasn't peaceful. It felt alive. One night around 1 a.m., I was buried in spreadsheets when I heard a chair creak. Startled, I looked up. The office was empty. The cubicles were as still as they'd been all evening. But there was something unsettling about the way the shadows stretched across the walls, as if they had minds of their own. I shook it off, blaming my sleep-deprived mind. The whispers started a week later. At first they were faint, like a breeze brushing past my ears. I couldn't make out words, just the soft cadence of voices. I asked the janitor, Mr. Henson, if he'd noticed anything strange during his rounds. His face turned pale. "You're working late, aren't you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. When I nodded, he muttered something under his breath and quickly walked away. That night I stayed even later, determined to finish my project and leave no room for my imagination to play tricks. Around 2:30 a.m., the lights flickered. I froze as I caught movement from the corner of my eye, a shadow darting across the far end of the office. My heart raced, but when I mustered the courage to check, there was nothing there. The final straw came when I discovered a folder on my desk that I hadn't put there. It was labeled Red Files, written in a jagged, almost desperate scrawl. Inside were documents that didn't make any sense. Random codes, unsettling photos of empty cubicles, and a list of names. My name was on the list. I tried to tell myself it was some sort of prank, but deep down, I knew there was something far darker at play. As I sat back down, the whispers grew louder, almost angry, like they were surrounding me. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my things and bolted for the elevator. The ride down felt like an eternity. The elevator lights flickered, and the air felt suffocating. When the doors finally opened, I ran out without looking back. I didn't return to work for a few days, claiming I was sick. But the memory of that night lingered, haunting my every thought. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. I thought the worst was over after I took a few days off from work. The unsettling whispers, the strange files, the feeling of being watched, they all began to fade. Or so I convinced myself. But as soon as I walked back into Sterling Logistics, I knew something was wrong. The air was thick, like it was holding its breath, and the atmosphere in the office felt heavier than ever. I took a deep breath and tried to push the feeling down. The whispers hadn't followed me home, after all. So surely, this was just stress catching up with me. But as I sat back at my desk, I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching me. Every time I turned my head, I thought I saw a figure standing just at the edge of my vision. But when I looked directly at it, there was nothing there. Then I noticed it. The red files. The folder I had found the week before, with my name scrawled across it, was gone. At first, I thought it was a sign that I had imagined everything, but then the whispers started again. Louder this time. They seemed to come from all around me, and I could make out snippets of words. Don't trust them. Too late. They're watching. I shuddered and tried to ignore it. My mind was clearly playing tricks on me, but the whispers didn't stop. That afternoon, while I was sorting through some files, I received an email from an unknown address. The subject line was simply, "It's time." When I opened the email, my heart skipped a beat. The body of the message contained nothing but a single image. A photo of me at my desk, taken from a dark corner of the office. I hadn't seen anyone near me at the time, but the camera angle was too perfect, too intentional. I instantly shut my laptop, my hands shaking. The room felt smaller, as though the walls were closing in on me. I looked around, expecting to see someone watching, but the office was still empty. The night shift was supposed to start in an hour, but no one had shown up yet. My heart raced as I stood up, ready to leave the office and never come back. But then the lights flickered again. This time, they didn't just flicker. They blinked in a strange, rhythmic pattern, almost like a code. My instinct screamed at me to get out, but I found myself rooted to the spot, unable to move. And then I heard it. A voice, clear as day, whispering my name. Megan. I spun around, but there was no one there. My breath came in short gasps, and I stumbled backward into a chair, my legs giving way beneath me. The office was now bathed in a cold, unnatural light. The hum of the old air conditioning system had grown deafening, and the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to be stretching and writhing, as if they had lives of their own. I was trapped. Suddenly the elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and a tall, thin figure stepped out. It was Mr. Henson, the janitor. His face was ashen, his eyes wide with fear. He didn't speak a word. He just looked at me for a long, uncomfortable moment. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, his voice shaking. "What do you mean? What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. Mr. Henson slowly walked over to my desk, his eyes darting nervously around the room. He glanced at the flickering lights, then back at me. "You're one of the new ones, right?" he asked, though it was more of a statement than a question. I nodded, confused. "You need to leave, now, before it's too late." He backed away toward the elevator. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He stopped, his gaze locking with mine. His expression was filled with dread. "You don't understand. You think this place is just an office, but it's not. It's a trap. They've been watching you, waiting for you." "Who?" I asked, my heart pounding. "The others," he said cryptically. And then, without another word, he turned and vanished into the elevator. I wanted to run after him, to demand answers, but I couldn't move. Something held me back. It was as though an invisible force was pressing down on me, keeping me rooted to the spot. I sat there, in stunned silence for what felt like an eternity. The office was still, too still. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. The whispers were gone, but the air felt charged with a menacing energy. I tried to focus, to gather my thoughts, but the image of the red files came rushing back into my mind. The list of names. My name. Had it all been a warning? Had I been chosen? Suddenly the office door slammed shut. I jumped, my pulse quickening. It was impossible. No one else was supposed to be here tonight. But I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, approaching from the hallway outside. I glanced around frantically, my mind racing. Should I hide? Should I confront whoever it was? I barely had time to react before the door opened, and a man stepped into the room. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit, his face obscured by a shadow. His presence alone made the air grow colder, as if his very existence sucked the warmth out of the room. "I see you've been looking into things," he said, his voice low and smooth, like honey laced with venom. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to steady my breathing. He stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. "Does it matter?" he replied. "You're already part of the plan." I backed away, but the room felt smaller, like the walls were pressing in on me. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice cracking. He smiled, a twisted grin that sent chills down my spine. "You were always meant to be here. This place has a way of finding the people it needs, and now you're one of them. Welcome to the family, Megan." Before I could respond, the lights went out, plunging the office into darkness. My heart pounded as I stumbled around, trying to find some kind of escape, but there was nowhere to go. The shadows closed in, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching me. I was trapped, and I knew, deep down, that I was never going to leave this place. The darkness was suffocating, the silence unbearable. I could hear the faint pounding of my own heart in my ears as I stumbled through the pitch-black office, my hands grasping for anything that might offer me some sense of security. The air was cold, too cold, and it clung to my skin like 1,000 invisible fingers. Every step I took seemed to echo through the emptiness, only amplifying the haunting stillness around me. Then I heard it again, the sound of footsteps, slow, methodical. They echoed from somewhere deeper in the building, yet it felt as if they were coming from all directions at once. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. They were coming for me. I didn't know where to go, but I knew I couldn't stay in that room. I turned and dashed toward the elevator, praying it would take me to safety. But as I reached for the button, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The elevator was already there. The doors were wide open, but the interior was wrong. There was a faint glow inside, too dim to be the usual fluorescent lights, but too bright to be natural. The walls of the elevator seemed to ripple, as if they were breathing, shifting in and out of focus. And then I saw him. The man in the dark suit. He was standing in the corner, just staring at me with those cold, calculating eyes. His lips curled into that same twisted smile I had seen earlier. "Going somewhere, Megan?" he asked, his voice smooth and taunting. I backed away, my eyes darting around the office for an escape, but it was too late. The building had trapped me. Without warning, the elevator doors slammed shut. The man's laughter filled the space, and the lights flickered again, casting long shadows that seemed to twist and writhe like living creatures. The elevator began to descend, but the sound of the machinery was wrong. Grating, distorted, as if the elevator was struggling against some unseen force. I pressed myself against the back wall, my mind racing. I had to escape. I had to get out. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was no way out. This place, Sterling Logistics, wasn't just a building. It was a prison, and I was its latest prisoner. The elevator stopped abruptly, the sudden jolt almost throwing me off balance. The doors opened, and I was greeted by the sight of the lower floor, a floor I had never seen before. The walls were covered in old, peeling wallpaper, and the air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. There were no cubicles, no desks, just a long, empty hallway stretching into the darkness. I stepped out cautiously, my footsteps echoing loudly in the stillness. It felt like I was walking through a forgotten part of the building, something hidden away from the rest of the world. And then I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, there was a door. It was made of dark wood, but it was unlike any door I had ever seen in the office. The wood was warped, twisted, as if it had been aged for centuries. The handle was made of iron, twisted into a grotesque shape that seemed to mock me. I didn't know why, but I felt compelled to walk toward it. Something inside me screamed to turn away, but I couldn't resist. As I reached for the door handle, I heard a voice, low, almost a whisper, coming from behind me. "Megan?" I whipped around, but there was no one there. The hallway was empty, just the door and the shadows. I turned the handle and stepped inside. What I found on the other side, I could never have prepared for. The room was small, cramped, and completely devoid of furniture. The only thing that stood out was a large, cracked mirror hanging on the far wall. But it wasn't just any mirror. The glass was cloudy, like it had been shrouded in mist for years. And as I approached, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The reflection wasn't mine. It was the man in the dark suit. His face was twisted in a grin that stretched far beyond what a human face should be able to do. His eyes gleamed with malice, and his fingers pressed against the glass as if he were trying to escape. I stepped back, horrified, and then the reflection moved. It wasn't just the man anymore. The reflection seemed to warp, shifting like a living thing. And suddenly I could see them. Dozens of faces. Faces I recognized. It was everyone who had ever worked at Sterling Logistics. Everyone who had disappeared over the years. Their faces were gaunt, their eyes hollow. They were all staring at me, trapped inside the mirror, as if they had been waiting for me. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me, and the walls seemed to close in. The space around me became a blur, twisting and distorting, like I was trapped inside some nightmare. The whispers returned, louder than ever, and I could hear their voices calling to me, urging me to join them. "Megan?" I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. I could feel the temperature drop, the air growing frigid, and then I felt it. Hands, cold as ice, gripping my arms. I tried to scream, but no sound to sound came out. The shadows in the room began to move, swirling around me, pulling me toward the mirror. I fought with all my strength, but it was no use. The hands held me fast, and the reflection in the mirror grew closer, its twisted grin widening. "Welcome to the family, Megan," the man in the suit whispered, his voice echoing in my ears. I screamed, but it was too late. The mirror shattered, and everything went black. Epilogue. I woke up hours later, or maybe it was days. The office was as it had always been, empty, cold, silent, but I wasn't the same. I could feel them. The others. They were with me now. Every time I looked into a mirror, I saw their faces, trapped behind the glass, just like the ones in the room. And every time I walked through the halls of Sterling Logistics, I could hear the whispers. They were waiting, watching, and I knew, deep down, I was never going to leave.